meeting to order. Good evening, everybody, and we're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we're back to reality. School year has started, and here we are. We're missing one board member, Paula, this evening. She had a conflict, and I'm hoping that Ilda will be able to join us remotely, but right now we have Katina remotely, and we have a quorum. And we'll start off with approval of the minutes, the special meeting of August 16th. Is there somebody who would like to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by Brendan. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Any opposed? And I'm abstaining because I wasn't there. Okay, next thing is public comment. Is there anybody who would like to speak during public comment? Okay, very quiet. Board chairs report. I want to thank the board for holding down the meeting and Mary for chairing it when I couldn't be here in August. And happy to have started the new year. We're going to hear more about the amazing convocation and other things related to the beginning of the year from the superintendent during her report. And we're going to be hearing from Mike Callahan this evening, which is something that probably all of us except Mary are very anxious to hear about. Mary probably knows the whole report, but at any rate, and we're going to need to take action to add an action item to the agenda this evening. In fact, why don't we just do that now and get it over with? I would entertain a motion to add approval of budget transfers to the agenda as item B under the action items. Motion made by Mark.
Second.
Seconded by Katina. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Okay, so we've taken care of that. And we'll go to the superintendent's report. It's over to you, Tracy.
Thank you very much. The board has been provided with a vacancy report. As I've explained to the board in some of our updates, I'm very proud of the work my team has done to fill as many positions as possible. We are aware there's a shortage going on, but we're in decent shape, comparatively speaking. So the board has a copy of all the vacancies throughout the district, any position that's open, and then a copy of those that directly impact our classrooms. I don't know if there's any questions. I can tell you that there have been a few movements in what was reported out on Friday. I know there's for example, the Barrows technology teacher is doing a model lesson on Friday. So if all goes well with the model lesson, could be offered employment and things of that nature. So, and I also know that the UConn physics teacher is starting tomorrow. So little things have happened to get, the vacancies filled even more so than what's reported.
Are there any questions, comments? I want to acknowledge the hard work that the team has put in on this, and particularly you, Grace. Thank you.
Okay, next up is just keeping the board up to date on the professional development that was offered to both certified and non-certified staff on Wednesday, August 30th. We actually gave you a copy of the offering so you could see. One of the things that I'm incredibly proud of is that we are doing a really good job of using our internal experts to provide professional development, sort of continually developing within the organization. But there's a number of offerings there that you can see in the packet: math, literacy, social emotional learning, across the board supports for our teachers and paraprofessionals.
Thanks. Was there good attendance and participation?
Absolutely. And we started to get some positive feedback, too, about some of the sessions.
Great.
Next is just letting the board know, and I know many board members were there, and I did thank those that were able to attend. So that was Alicia and Ilda and Lynn and Paula. That's all. So we were very thankful to have them there and dressed in their 70s attire. The convocation really was an exciting, energetic, energizing event. We had a costume contest, which so many staff members took part in. I wasn't sure how that was going to go over, but it did. Lots of dancing, clapping, cheering. So it was really a nice way to kick off the year. And we did explain that getting into the 70s relates to our accountability index, which is the state's report card of all districts, in Connecticut. And if we are to get our accountability index into the 70s, we would be removed from some of the state oversight lists. It's one of my goals as the superintendent. I don't actually believe that we need to be there. So now we just need to prove it by getting into the 70s. So it was just a great way to start the school year. And kudos to Mr. Weathers. I can't not mention that he was the focus of our video clips during the convocation and did a lot of dancing for us in a John Travolta outfit. So thank you, Mr. Weathers. I provided for the board a list of the open house dates so that you're aware of when and where those are taking place. And last but not least, the new turf field and track in Windham High School, which will be a nice segue for Mr. Callahan's presentation. It was finished in the spring, but we are actually having the first home games. Our September 7th is our Lady Whippets, or the soccer team is playing their first home game on the new field. And on the 8th of September, Friday, is our first home football game. And we are going to be rededicating the Ferrigno Field and the Haddad Track. Both of those families have been invited to attend to that rededication ceremony before the game. And we're really excited about being at the game and watching that take place. So all the board members, as you know, I let you know last week that had, I think it was last week, that had was on our calendar, something exciting. Sort of a little bit of tradition in keeping the field and track named after who they were originally dedicated to with the new and improved track and field. It's really beautiful. I don't know if you've had a chance to be on it yet, but it's really something. I know because we had Neil dancing on it for the videos.
Any questions or comments? Okay. So the next item is really the big topic for this evening. It's a presentation by Mike Callahan on the Windham High School Renovate as New Building Committee work, and Mike is the chair of that committee. And folks on the board who would like to view the screen during the presentation, I suggest you move to the chairs, and you could bring your mic with you in case you wanted to ask questions. Welcome, Ilda. Nice to see you here.
Thank you. Nice to be seen.
All set? All right. Well, thanks for inviting me tonight. What I'm hoping to do is just share basically the status of the high school project, give you a little bit of background about the undertakings over the last couple of years, but maybe more importantly is to share with everybody some of the significant outcomes and the results of the construction effort over the last 2 years. I also have at the very end, which is the same information in the handout, a one-page summary of basically the status, the schedule, and the budget. And in my opinion, those are very important for the Board of Ed as well as the community at large to have a appreciation of. As a means of background, last night I gave the same presentation to the town council, and again, with the idea of making sure the public is informed through its formal boards and elected officials. And let me go back here. So one of the distinguishing characteristics of the high school prior to the renovation, anybody attending the high school or visiting it for the first time always had difficulty finding the front door, myself included. So one of the features of the new high school may seem unimportant, but nonetheless, in my mind, is actually important. With the simple addition of a pergola, which is that very simple structure, domed top, it'll be lit, really draws attention to the main entrance of the high school. This photograph also illustrates, in many ways, the new exterior aesthetic. If you recall, the sections in this photograph that are the brown natural color, those used to be painted white cinder blocks, fairly industrial looking. Really, the addition of this relatively simple, it's a composite material, it's got a long life, minimal maintenance, really improves the overall aesthetics of the exterior. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to, we haven't replaced all the bricks. There's going to be some areas that are still vintage 1960s, but there was a significant effort made, particularly at the entrances, to draw attention to the entrances by including the pergolas, but also the aesthetic improvements of the siding. While I'm on this photograph, I'll mention now, all the glass throughout the high school has been upgraded. So those are all new windows throughout the entire high school. New high emissivity glass, which means they're energy efficient, reduce sun glare. So there'll be significant benefit in terms of energy savings, but also comfort to the students, and natural light will be able to get in and enhance the teaching environment. So I'm going to give 2 seconds on the background, a description of the work in project progress, some of the challenges. I'm really here to show some of the results. We've got some nice photographs that will show you the areas of the building that are completed. I'll briefly summarize what's ahead over the next year, and then I'll do a quick wrap-up in terms of the status, schedule, and budget, and then, of course, I'll answer any questions. And feel free to interrupt as I'm speaking. As most, if not all of you know, the voters approved $112 million for the renovation project. The building committee worked with the architect and the architect's team, construction manager, and Colliers over a period of 2 years with the school administration, senior administrators at the superintendent's office, as well as the teachers in a planning and design effort. That happened right in the middle of COVID. That presented a number of challenges in terms of access to the building, access to each other for meetings. It took a little bit longer than we had hoped, and it wasn't it actually wasn't a perfect planning process, but in many ways I think we got it right. Construction started just about 2 years ago in September of 2021. We're about 2/3 through the schedule. And again, this was a top-to-bottom renovation, so there is a ton of work done in the existing building and on the site. So what was included in the project? Just very briefly, most of you would know that there are 3 elements, 3 components of the renovation project: the high school component, the early childhood center, and the central office. So there are 3 basic blocks and functions in that building that have been incorporated into the existing square footage. We had very, very minor additions to the building. Those additions were only meant to accommodate egress requirements at the front. There's a new stair tower. And toward the back of the building, in the ECC, we added a very small bump-out addition so that we could segregate the egress quarters for the early childhood center and the high school. We did not want to have a commingling of high school kids with the ECC, so we bumped the backside of the building out a little bit to accommodate the early childhood center. New parking lots with improved stormwater management throughout. All new athletic fields, including the artificial turf, soccer and football fields as shown earlier in the photograph. all the spaces in the building for all three functions have been upgraded: floors, walls, and ceilings. We've added a significant amount of exterior insulation on the walls to reduce heat loss and to minimize air conditioning requirements. So all those spaces have been upgraded. New 100% air conditioning throughout the building, new heating system, and maybe post-COVID, we ended up including, not necessarily as a result of COVID, but just as good design practice, new dedicated outside air ventilation. So the indoor air quality should be improved significantly. We're able to control the amount of outside air that comes in for ventilation as a function of the number of occupants of the space. So it's a nice trade-off between improved ventilation and energy cost. All new lights, data and voice systems, smart boards, and other educational support technology throughout the facility. And you'll see in the photographs coming up, you'll see examples of those. And as I mentioned earlier, new windows and upgraded wall insulation. So even though we're adding air conditioning, my goal, and I think it's going to be accomplished, is the overall operating costs of the building are likely to be lower than what they have been in the past. Another important component of this project is what we call FF&E, fixture and equipment. All new lab equipment, furniture, including tables, chairs, kitchen equipment, anything that's not attached to the building has been included in the project. And again, some of the photographs, you'll see examples of that. And then there's a fairly large photovoltaic system included in the project that will save at least $70,000 a year of electric costs in the facility. So again, although this is not a new contemporary net zero building, the building committee and the design team worked hard to incorporate elements that will reduce the energy use and consumption as well as reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that was kind of the, okay, what are we doing? This is how it was done. This is an example of under slab new utilities being installed in the corridors. We ended up digging up a lot of corridors to put in new waste piping. You can get a sense of the what the interior of the building looked like under the construction. Fortunately, the construction manager did a very good job of segregating educational areas from construction areas. So as you can see, there are no kids hanging out in this picture. There's many areas where interior walls had to be infilled, where doors were taken out, walls were taken down or relocated. Although there's a new roof on the building, there were a number of new roof penetrations provided for new rooftop ventilating and air conditioning equipment. These guys here are shown restoring the roof membrane and making sure it's watertight after a new piece of equipment, which is on the left, was installed. Here's the final installation of floor tile in one of the classrooms. You can see there's ceiling tiles installed, some ceiling tiles installed. This classroom is just maybe a week or two from being open when this photograph was taken. This is an example of some of the challenges. This is a new rooftop dedicated outside air heating unit being placed on the roof. This is at the back of the building, and actually this is probably the unit, Tracy, for your area, if I'm not mistaken. Your office is right, not yours personally, but your area. And of course there still is, we're right in the middle of doing the reconstruction of the what we call native soil fields, which are basically the hardball field, the softball field, and the football and soccer practice. We're hoping to get that work completed this fall. A couple of the challenges. Here's a great example of the amount of under slab work. This is a photograph in the old locker rooms. The locker rooms were completely reconfigured. Basically, the only thing that was left in the old locker rooms were the exterior walls and the ceiling and supports, not even the ceilings, the structural support. All the interior walls were removed, all the under slab plumbing and fixtures, showers, toilets, all of that. And this is all the new piping for those relocated or reconfigured locker rooms. We had a similar situation in the kitchen. Kitchen got completely revamped with new waste piping installed as well. So you can imagine this involved workers in there with jackhammers, shovels and picks, grabbing concrete and hand digging and hauling the dirt and the rubble out by hand. That was a pretty significant undertaking when it occurred. Good thing is the locker rooms are done, so that work is past. Another challenge, you can't really tell, but that small addition at the back of the building was where the new ECC rooms were being built. Also was the location of the original electrical transformer. So the addition was actually built around that transformer. Roof was put up over it until the new electric service was installed, new transformer located on the south side of the building where the new electric equipment is. And just recently, in the last month, they peeled back the new roof. It was a temporary roof. They peeled back the roof, got in there, plucked the transformer out through the roof, put the ceiling back on, and now we're working on completing the renovation of that classroom. So you can imagine the logistics associated with this, both by the design team and the constructors. But again, this is just a good example of the level of complexity for this project and the efforts put in to remedy or address some of those challenges. There were some, and again, Tracy, this is in your area, or it's actually up in the higher area, up where the school labs are going to be. These overhangs are typical of the building, and because they're cantilevered, they undergo quite a bit of stress. And fortunately, the structural engineer identified these as areas that needed reinforcement. And so in many, not all, but in many areas, these overhang areas have been reinforced. And it wasn't very expensive or technically challenging, but you can see the amount of temporary reinforcement and additional brickwork really required a lot of detailed and close attention to the installation procedures to pull it off. Okay, now the fun part. This is, and I believe most of you, if some of you, certainly have been in the auditorium. This is a really good example of the new aesthetic in the high school. There's a fairly uniformed color scheme throughout the building. In the auditorium, again, everything new, completely new ceiling, new fire sprinkler system installed, all new floors, all new seats. The auditorium was reduced in size to take advantage of that space behind for music and additional instructional space. But you can see the acoustical attenuation panels, those multicolored hexagon-shaped objects on the wall. So the auditorium is really a good example of the improvements made in terms of the aesthetics. You guys stole my thunder with the field picture at the very beginning, but I can certainly appreciate why. Again, the football and soccer field is, as you all know, is the artificial turf. That we were able to include that through URSA funding, and it really is a great enhancement for the project and the community. Now down to the academics. This is an example of a completely renovated classroom. And again, you can see new furniture, tables, chairs, white smart boards in the center, whiteboards, all new lighting, counters, cabinets, and cupboards throughout the facility. Here's another, I believe this is a computer room, a little bit different aesthetic, but again, 100% renovation on the interior. This actually is, for me, is one of the things that my biggest surprise is the inclusion of the culinary kitchen. Although I'm an engineer and has practiced engineering for 40 years, I actually started as a short order cook when I was in high school. I didn't have the benefit of getting any education before I became a short order cook. I did it on the fly. So this is something I'm very proud of in terms of the project. This is a fully functional instructional kitchen. The high school kids will have that benefit. So the kids who are not necessarily planning on going to college but are looking for a career in the trades, this is a really important component of that curriculum at the high school. Really, it's got a hood, full stove, convection ovens, serving lines. It's really top-notch. Okay, and on the right is the example of the hallway. And again, you can see it's really spectacular. Nice colors. The blue color carries through most of the building. And again, good lighting, good floors. Oops. Here's the new renovated gymnasium. And I believe that's been turned over. I don't know if you guys are actually using it, but it's certainly been turned over. Or if not, will be very soon. And again, really nice common space. This is the cafeteria. Really nice ceiling lighting, new tables, new chairs. Cafeteria is a little bit smaller than what it used, but it's, again, really appropriate for the size of the school at this point. And here's a picture of the south parking lot with the renovated parking and access drive. And on the upper right-hand side, you can see the south parking lot with the photovoltaic carports located above. Another exterior feature is the press box and new home team bleachers. We have new bleachers for the visitors on the other side as well. Okay, next steps. The remaining elements of the project are the completion of the Early Childhood Center. They've made a fair amount of progress this year, but there's still additional work to be done. They're currently working on the second story where the labs are located. That will, over the next, certainly the next 9 months, that'll be a significant undertaking. The kitchen right now is completely pulled apart. Kitchen, we expect a fair amount of work to be needed before they're done. The media center was used for temporary classrooms, so now that we've got a larger number of classrooms available, finished classrooms, we'll be able to start moving out of the media center and the auxiliary gym, where we also had temporary classrooms. So those areas that we've temporarily occupied for temporary classrooms will now have to undergo renovation. And then we still have a fair amount of site work, additional parking at the front of the building and at the back of the building. Tennis courts need to be completed, and as I showed you earlier, the ball fields. And then I gave you a handout, and I'm going to just quickly, this didn't project very well. I apologize. But this summary sheet basically covers the three really important high-level criteria in which we're tracking the project. So I've decided this is an important or an appropriate format because it allows you to see that the projects of this complexity progress from different perspectives at different rates. So up at the top, you can see that we've, in the blue, we've completed approximately 160,000 square feet of renovation, of approximately 110. And I can't actually read that, so maybe, does anybody have an extra copy? 220, yeah, thank you. So we're about 73% done of the renovation. If you drop down for a little more detail, we have about 38 classrooms completely renovated out of 58. So we're about 65% classrooms have been turned over. In the ECC, as you can see, we're only 15% along the way. There's only 3 ECC classrooms completed out of a planned 21. We expect the ECC, we're going to see a big jump in this statistic in the fall when they finish up the ECC. But those two lines give you an idea of where we are in terms of classrooms. And of course, those, as we progress, those numbers are going to increase until we're 100% done. In terms of construction duration, we're about 60% done. So we're almost 2/3 of the way through the schedule. And you can see that on the schedule where the actual physical area renovated is a little bit ahead. So I am confident, can't guarantee it, but I'm pretty confident we're going to meet the schedule. The construction manager is very confident as well. So I'm hoping the plan is that the building gets turned over in December of 2024, but I would say by the fall of 2024 we'll have a good deal of the facility back. And Tracy, I know there was some correspondence back and forth, and I believe that's essentially what they've said. It's not going to be 100% done in the fall, but and of course there's always glitches and problems and things like that. But we're making, in terms of the schedule, we're making really good progress. And I have to really give credit to the contractor. The contractor brought their A game to the table at the very beginning. They mobilized. Took them a while to figure things out, work with the staff, but once they got going, things have worked out really quite well. In terms of the financial commitments, we have either under contract or the building committee is prepared to vote on a total scope of about $110 million. So we're very close to our budget. So we have, of the $112 million, we've committed up to $110. We have pending additional changes that we are considering, which is this last item, of about $1.2 million. If we don't have to do anything beyond what we're contemplating as of today, we've made it. And that's obviously our goal. So the building committee and the school staff and school administration, we've been working very closely with them, and I believe everybody has a good and deep appreciation of that we've got to basically soft land. We've got to land this project under budget. I personally have made that my top priority, second to safety, that we bring this in under budget. I know the school's system is very seriously contemplating building more schools here in town, and I feel very strongly that it's important that this building committee and this project demonstrates the town is responsible, can be responsible, has the know-how, the willpower, and the interest of being careful with our taxpayers' money. So for me, that's a super, super important objective. And Mary will attest that I jump up and down every meeting reminding folks that we have to be very careful with our money. And I believe really through a significant team effort with everybody, school administration, the design team, the contractors, and the building committee, we've really got the process down so that we're homing in on our decision making. So overall, I think the news is good. We're roughly 2/3 of the way through the process. We have had challenges, but none that are really out of line with a project of this type or complexity. We've had some challenges managing the relationships with the parties, our consultants, but again, nothing extraordinary or unexceptional. So again, I'm very optimistic. Before I take questions, I'd just like to make two comments. One is there has been and unfortunately the school, there's no direct other than the superintendent. The school staff has been wonderful. Tracy, I mean, I know you know this because you talk to them and you see it, but the school staff and the students have been phenomenal. We've had requests for air quality testing that have been absolutely appropriate and timely. We've had suggestions. We've had requests for changes that made sense. But most importantly, the school administration has really, it's extraordinary how hard they've worked to build a relationship with the contractor. And the contractor has done the reciprocal of that. So there's a really strong, and Mary, you've seen it in terms of the comments made at the meetings, and I know Tracy, you've seen it. There's really been a very, very strong working relationship, and that's made my job infinitely better because I'm not in there micromanaging, oh my God, there's a water leak in the southwest corridor. That's something the school staff has really been on top of, working directly with the contractor, and contractors really responded really quite well. So we've had really fortunate relationships there, and again, I want the Board of Ed to know school staff, Dr. Youngberg, Neil, and the rest of Dr. Youngberg's staff and the school staff have done a really phenomenal job. They're going to be the beneficiaries of it, of the results in it, and I'm really happy to have been part of that. The other comment is we've been fortunate that the state has authorized a maximum number, but has increased our reimbursement to 95% for the entire project. Whereas at the beginning of the project, it was a mess. They weren't going to let us put the central office in. They weren't going to give us any money for this. They weren't going to give us any money for that. And through, the efforts of, not me, but through the efforts of Dr. Youngberg and others, basically the reimbursement rate was set at 95%, but just for the school portion of it and the ECC. And then more recently, there's been some state legislation that authorized the 95% reimbursement to apply to the central office portion. So the bottom line is, and there's two things about that. The bottom line is the total cost to the communities is really going to be significantly less than anticipated, and that'll have an immediate and direct impact on our taxes in town. So that's really, really positive news. The other thing that's a caution, though, is keep in mind that 95% is a maximum reimbursement. There are always ineligible components of the project. So if you take 95% of $112 million, if that's what we spend, or let's say it's 110, we're not going to get 95% of that back from the state. That'll be the maximum. It'll be reduced by ineligible items. And ineligible items are relatively small, and I can't even think of an example, but the reimbursement will be less than 95, but nominally it'll be much greater than what was anticipated. So again, I'm going to knock on wood because I'm a little bit suspicious. We still have another year ahead of us, so I'm hoping I'd come back in another 3 or 4 months and tell you that we're on track, and I'm certainly very hopeful by the time we're done, we're pretty much going to accomplish the goals as set out by the Board of Ed through our Ed spec. So we've made, I think we've done the building committee, and Mary, I have to thank Mary and the rest of the building committee. They've been absolutely phenomenal to work with. So it's really been a good team effort. So, okay.
Thank you. Why don't you just stay there for a second, and the
Sure.
board will move back to its seats, and there may be some people who have questions or comments. And I also, on that point that you made, Mike, about the reimbursement rate, I also think we need to acknowledge our state legislators, May Flexer and Susan Johnson, for working so hard on that issue for the taxpayers and the school system.
Right.
So this is a great report. Tracy and I talked about the board when we have our retreat on Saturday, October 7th, being able to tour the building, the parts of the building that we're able to see in person. So that'll be great. Does anybody on the board have any questions or comments? Well, go ahead, Mark.
Mike, we are running very close here to the budget, it looks like. Of the owner's change request deferred, how much of that are we able to lose? Let's assuming something, it doesn't go all well, assuming if we run into some surprise and our financial commitment goes up, are there things in that last column that you can defer and or not do at all?
Yes. Some of those, and again, I have, and I can, if the board is interested, I have a detailed breakdown of what those items are, and it'll be pretty apparent when you look at them. Some are things that I, as the chairman, would like to do, and there are actually some items on there, Tracy, that I don't want to do. And I don't think they're a bad idea. We have specifically and deliberately identified requests and put them into, this makes sense, we really should do these. And these are, this makes sense, but we may not be able to do them. So the whole purpose of that list is to make sure that the building committee and the school administration realizes that if we run out of money, we just can't do them. So we better prioritize. And as you can imagine, with a 3-year project, we've done expensive certain things up front with the idea that we had a fairly good contingency, but also with the knowledge that there are going to be things that come up that might be, we don't have a choice. And let me give you an example. So there are things on a project like this that when you renovate a building and you pull down a wall, you find a condition that nobody knew about. And you have to fix it, like some of those structural improvements. It's my opinion that we are way beyond finding any more of those. We're going to find small things, a couple of $1,000s worth of piping that was rusted, a structural member that was, defective. So I guess the shorter and simpler answer, Mark, is yes, that list, that 1.2 million or so, has things that we're likely going to do, and then we have things that are kind of wish list things, and that we will be very careful not to make those decisions until the very end of the project. And again, I didn't bring that list tonight, but I'll make sure I send it on to the board for your review.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? No, that was, I guess, go ahead, Brendan.
So, Mike, as we're looking at possibly doing one of these elementary schools, do you have any advice for us as we go into this and start the planning process?
Lots of advice. Actually, there's a sort of an ad hoc group that has been talking about. I've already met with them once. I provided, I call the lessons learned list, and there's actually a few more things that I will add. And my goal, and we got plenty of time, my goal is to actually take the experience from this project and forward it on to the next building committee and school administration, so that some of the experiences that we had on this project can help inform the next group for the next project. And they fall into all kinds of categories, big things, big decisions, versus little ones. And again, I've been keeping a list of the things that I would strongly advise the next building committee to work on. And so and Tracy, you know some of them already,
I think your biggest piece of advice was don't do a renovate as new ever.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And the board heard you on that.
Yeah, and that's good. And again, while I have your ear, it was not a bad decision when the high school, when the choice was presented to the voters to do a renovate like new. And again, I'll go on record here for a couple of reasons. Number one, the state was pushing it big time. The state was renovate, 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 renovate. The other thing is, and again, I've lived in town for a while, is I'm absolutely convinced that the voters would not have approved a new school. And I think the powers to be at the time who were advocates for the school renovation understood that and made an informed choice, and I actually think that was the right choice. Now, having been there and done that, I think we can make a strong, compelling argument, including a financial one, that a renovate like new is probably no less expensive than a new building. You pay for it in time. We could have built a 200,000 square foot new high school on that site in 24 months, not 39 months. We probably could have done it for less, and that's directly from feedback from the contractor because of the phasing and the sequencing and temporary facilities, lack of efficiency. And the trade-off would have been maybe a smaller building, less components. But again, I will make sure that, as maybe one of my final acts on the building committee, that this board gets the benefit of our experience. So,
Thank you.
Tracy and I have the preliminary list from that first conversation we had with Mike. So we can pass it along to you, Brendan, as the chair of school planning and design. Anything else?
I just want to say thank you, Mike, for updating the board. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and all the work
Yeah.
that is taken.
All the hours of work.
Thank you. Okay. So now we're on to committee reports, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Mark, Finance and Audit.
Thank you. We had a brief meeting before this board meeting. One of the topics we discussed was possibly moving the committee meeting back further into the month so that we are better able to get up-to-date figures. It's just not enough time to turn around figures for the first part of the month. So we don't have a year-to-date financial review, for instance. We did review the budget transfers, and the committee is recommending approval of budget transfers totaling $284,234. A large part of that was to transfer money to cover teaching positions that we weren't able to fill or other positions so that we can hire stopgap or stand-in people until we can fulfill those positions. But it's, as Tracy pointed out, it's very tough because there's just not a good bank of employees out there. Actually, I think we're in not bad shape considering, I think, was it Watertown or Waterbury had 150 vacancies at one point? But that was essentially what we discussed. And we did review a little bit of EastCon's finances to what we're paying them and what we're getting in return. That seems to be fine. So that's the meeting.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, so now we're on to school planning and design. Brendan?
Thank you. We met last month on, my notes are wrong, I think it was the 17th. It wasn't July 25th, though. We're going to change that in the minutes. We had an update on the elementary school consolidation, on the referendum. We're not pushing to have it on the November election anymore, as that would really not be feasible, as we would have to have that in by the end of this week to do that, and we're just not quite ready yet. As of right now, we're probably eyeing a referendum in February on the elementary consolidation.
Or March, somewhere
March,
around there.
somewhere February, March, somewhere in that time frame. It gives us a couple more months, especially since we don't need as much lead time for a special referendum as we do, including it in the municipal elections. We're going to continue working towards all the necessary approvals to get there. And then there was some discussion as to, there was some new information as to whether or not the Sweeney site could work, and it looks like it may be that it could work. We still haven't decided on a final site, and there's still a question as to whether or not we have to have a final site selected before we go to referendum. So that's all stuff we're looking into. After that, we got into various minor facilities updates for the summer. Sly, I can't remember his last name, I'm sorry, Ferreira, is currently acting as our Director of Facilities, and will be doing so for the rest of the school year. And there was a number of small projects from the capital improvement lists that were done over the summer, or we're just finishing up as we met. From the looks of it, many of them were actually completed before school started, which is excellent. And that was our meeting. Any questions?
Thank you, Brendan. Any questions, comments? No, the committee is working very hard and will be reporting more to folks, and we'll be talking about some of this at the retreat.
Yes.
In October. Thanks.
Thank you.
So now we're on to action items on the agenda, and there is information in your packet for action item A, acceptance of an anonymous donation to Windham High School football in the amount of $2,500. I would entertain a motion on that, and then we can open for discussion if there's anything you
So
wanted
moved.
to say, Tracy.
So
Motion-
moved.
Motion made. I thought I heard Brendan first.
Second.
Seconded by Mark. Tracy, did you want to say something about it? I saw you.
Just that we're very thankful for the anonymous donation to purchase cleats for the football team.
Right, for cleats. So, is there any further discussion on that? Mark?
Yeah, I too am very thankful for these type of timely donations, but it raises a concern in my mind as to inequities in the other programs. We fortunately have generous donors for the football program. And recently we've approved a number of donations, and I can't say enough gratitude for that, but I worry about how this is going to affect some of our other teams that don't have the same type of backing. Do we have anything to do for those four folks?
So we did actually do recently a sort of an audit of where we stood in terms of athletic uniforms and equipment, because we did have access to the ESSER funds, and outfitting or investing in our programs such as athletics and music was one of the things the community asked for. So I think we're in decent shape, but I can certainly follow up with the athletic director to find out if there's any other gaps that he sees an issue with, and we can figure it out from there.
Yeah, as I say, I don't want too big an inequity to develop. I mean, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That's a very good point. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the anonymous donation for Windham High School football, please indicate by raising your hand. Ilda, are you voting? Okay, so, well, it's unanimous without Ilda, and can't publicly thank this person. I guess I can publicly thank whoever this person is on our behalf. And then we added item B, which is action to approve the transfers that were recommended by Finance and Audit, the budget transfers. Could I get a motion on that? So moved. Motion made by Katina, and the amount is $284,234, and seconded by Ilda. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Okay, it was unanimous. Thank you. And now we're on to public comment. Is there anybody who would like to speak during public comment?
I don't know if I missed the whole thing about the Kennedy Expo. At some point, was it discussed at all? But I just want
No.
to congratulate all the staff that made it possible, and numerous families that it was wonderful.
Thank you for pointing that out, Katina, because it was one of the most heavily attended events we've had, and I'm not sure why we forgot to include it in the packet. So thank you. I'll make sure I get you the information. I know from having been there that I believe there, we handed out more than 400 or close to 400 backpacks. Oh, 600, so even more than I thought. And it really was a wonderful event. So many people came, and there was even extra people there because of the steeplechase run or race. So it really was an exciting event. I love the idea about offering free haircuts and the music playing. It was,
That was very touching.
yes, it was a great event. And
Really well organized, I should say, so congratulations, kudos to the staff.
yeah, I apologize. We're going to have to get you a write-up on that. I'm
Right.
surprised you didn't say something to me, Mr. Camacho.
Well, there's
Thank
been a
you,
lot,
Katina.
there's been a lot happening, so.
We've been a little
and
busy.
That was on August 19th, so we can, we'll hear about it between now and our next meeting, perhaps. And I heard rave reviews. I was running one of the steeplechase rest stops that day, and I heard rave reviews from the riders about all the great things that were happening down at Joseph Square, so thank you. Anything else on under public comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:56.
I move, we move.
We're moved.